Hi, my name is Dr. Heather Pacheco-Guffrey. I'm an associate professor of STEM and elementary and early childhood education at Bridgewater State University in southeastern Massachusetts. I teach undergraduate and graduate courses in science, engineering, and tech methods, and today I'm going to share a classification of 4 types of apps to inform your choice of apps for your students in science. When I'm not teaching, I'm doing research on the use of technology to support content-based instruction. Part of my research work is writing the Tech Talk column for NSTA's journal Science and Children. I love this part of my work. This really fun role gives me the chance to explore all kinds of science and engineering apps and find ways to connect them with NGSS. Here are some of the many factors to consider when you think about bringing apps for content learning into your science instruction. You'll find these factors addressed in the Tech Talk column installments. Today, I'm going to share a way of thinking about apps in terms of students, specifically student experiences and student access. There are lots of apps out there for science learning. Today, I'll share the characteristics of 4 categories of apps: e-texts, interactive simulations, interactive models, and datasets. Keep in mind that science apps are a great complement to hands-on learning, but they certainly don't replace it. Make sure you keep lots of hands-on learning in your teaching. Content-heavy reading is among the least effective means for students to learn in science. However, if you have to use content-heavy texts, electronic texts or e-texts have the potential to increase access to science content delivered through written English for all of your learners, including your English learners, students with disabilities, and your above, below, and on-grade readers. Great e-text apps provide leveled readings that match a wide range of students' reading abilities and also provide the same science content, the same science vocabulary, developmentally appropriate concepts, and the flexibility to level up and down as needed, all regardless of reading level. Great e-texts also help reduce the passive learning rut students can find themselves in by building in interactive and multimedia resources to support multimodal learning, and built-in content-based formative assessments to help students and teachers gauge progress. All of these features provide the opportunity for students to take on a more active role in meaning-making. Interactive simulation apps preserve natural laws in the world and give students control over variables they would have control over in the real world. They're a great tool to use in conjunction with hands-on learning. They can also provide greater access to experimentation resources, which can help all students become more familiar with variables, experiments, vocabulary, and concepts. Interactive simulations can also come in the form of virtual field trips. 360-degree video technology brings field trips to life and lets students explore. I particularly like this kind of interactive simulation because it builds background by giving students immersive experiences with places, things that they may be unfamiliar with at this point. Interactive model apps are magic. Like with the simulation apps, these apps often have students engaging in a model world that follows natural laws. However, these apps tend to grant users control over variables they would not really have control over in real life, like the weather. NGSS cross-cutting concepts, such as cause and effect, can be made wonderfully accessible with interactive model apps. Variables in the model environments are limited, which can allow scientific relationships to emerge more clearly than we may see in real-world experiments. This can afford students deeper, behind-the-scenes perspectives of complex systems. Dataset apps can be a fantastic way for students to investigate the world around them. Data can be displayed in a number of different ways that will impact student access, such as maps, tables, graphs, and more. Some formats will be more accessible to your students, so choose carefully. Datasets are also a great tool for building student data literacy. Citizen science datasets are phenomenal learning resources that enable students to benefit from, and in many cases, join in the work of scientists to understand the world around us. They're a great choice for place-based learning. Citizen science usually requires some training, and then students are often running. Just be mindful of student privacy in login apps. These 4 categories are not a hard and fast taxonomy. They're simply a way to think about what different kinds of apps have to offer and to inform your choices about the kinds of experiences and access you want for your students. Apps may have features that fit multiple categories, like Google Maps. Take a photo of this slide and check out the apps listed here. You won't regret it. Thank you for joining this presentation. If you have any questions or comments about apps, or if you'd like to see specific apps included in upcoming Science and Children Tech Talk, or if you'd like to just say hi, please contact me. Take a photo of this slide for my contact info. I would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lauren Burrow. I am a professor at Stephen F. Austin State University in elementary education.
And I'm Dr. Chrissy Cross. I'm an associate professor of secondary education at Stephen F. Austin State University.
And we are presenting Streaming Engineering, which is based on our article from Science and Children in 2019. So we are talking about novel engineering. We want to do a few words to get us started. Novel, meaning both book and innovative. For engineering, we take a very broad term of just being a maker. And for scientists, we borrow from the sciencecouncil.org definition, which is very inclusive and shows that science goes across many disciplines.
We partnered with a local elementary school to help encourage the students there to be scientists and go through the process of engineering based on a novel. And these are the 9 steps that we went through, and we will give you a quick overview of those steps.
So the first one we will be starting with is read a book. You have to start novel engineering with a novel. We suggest that this is a great time to check out the book that you are going to present to your entire class, maybe even to an entire grade level. We did it with an entire school. You can see some of our selections here. We really went for books that were inclusive and that showed characters that could be scientists that aren't typically depicted as scientists.
The book that we chose was Marvelous Cornelius, about a sanitation worker collecting trash after Hurricane Katrina. One of the important aspects of this project is that the teachers allow students to do the brainstorming about the problems in the book and create their own solutions to those problems.
So to get them brainstorming and to think creatively, which just means to imagine something that wasn't already here, you can use books like Not a Stick so that they understand when you work with paper towel rolls, that can be a tube, that can be a portal. When you use a box, that can become a car, that can become a spaceship. You can also show examples of other students who have done creative solutions.
We chose to use recyclable materials such as plastic bottles, paper towel rolls. We did buy a few items such as glue and tape and make sure that they have plenty of variety of items to use to help create and craft their solution.
Once they start creating things, so when netting becomes the gas tank, when markers are able to draw in road signs, they then want to get feedback from other students. This is something you need to teach them about. Yes, and I like this project. And have you thought about doing this?
We were happy to give our students opportunities to share what they have created. They love to be able to talk about their project and give feedback to each other about their projects.
So whether it is a full-on presentation like a science fair mode, or if it is going to be written down through data results, you can use sheets like this. It's available through our article. They can record and start learning that scientists have to show their process, both the ideas they had, the problem they chose to solve, and the many iterations that they go through before things work. They can sketch, they can write it up. This can become part of their science notebook or displayed.
One of the books that we have used in class is Maria Had a Little Llama. Some of the problems that the students came up with were that the llama misses Maria when she goes to school, and the solution was to build a fun house for the llama, so the llama's distracted while Maria is at school.
So here what you're seeing is this was actually pre-service teachers and young students were invited to class to try to solve Maria and the llama's problem. Again, we just used simple everyday items that the college students brought in that would have been thrown out as trash, but you can see the dynamic engineering that is going on here.
And a home ceremony they built me. And the tunnel was Vivian's idea. It's a tunnel to school and to his house. So it's like, so it has like a recess or at least some points so you can go visit him.
Right? Can you tell me about some of the...
We also chose to implement a research study while we did this project in our school to encourage students and teachers to think about themselves as scientists in order to encourage students of all races, genders to enter STEM fields.
We look forward to sharing these results in future studies.
Thank you for attending our presentation.
If you have any questions, our emails are available here, or you can look up our article and get the actual 9 steps, details, and examples of how this could work in your own school. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Here I sit on a beautiful June day at Moore's Swamp. The red-winged blackbirds are singing, the cattails are swaying. But this land was actually a lot different. It was more wet. In fact, it was a deep swamp. So what happened? This is the tale of a 5th grade class who tried to come to the rescue of this habitat. There was a lot more water. In fact, it could be waist high. It was the home to many creatures, such as the great blue herons who have now left. One creature that did particularly well here was the Blandings turtle, a threatened species in Massachusetts. So what happened, and how did the students get involved in this project? At the beginning and end of each school year, I would read this book, The Seeker of Knowledge, The Man Who Deciphered the Egyptian Hieroglyphs, to my students. It's about, as a child, this man said he was going to crack the code, and no one believed him. The bottom line is students can do amazing things if you just let them try. So it all started with a cow, but not this kind, what was called the Challenge of the Week, and it focused around data analysis. I figured since I was being trained in data protocols, why not have the students also use the data protocols to work on data sets that were both amusing and engaging to them. Our second cow had a real-life purpose, to analyze habitats to see where young Blandings turtles grew the most. One of the habitats, Moore's Swamp, where they did well, was going to be drained by the town. The students needed to analyze data that the biologists could use at a natural resources public hearing. Many of my students attended the meeting held in this room. It was a proud mama moment when they got up, stated their name and address, and used evidence to refute the presenters who were discussing why it should be drained. Luckily, the commission put a hold on the project, and it gave my students time to gather more evidence to refute the arguments the DPW made. One tip I always stress is to use your local resources. Every community has lots of them, ranging from libraries and local experts. The worst thing that somebody will say if asked for by a bunch of students to come talk with them is no. But in my experience, people are really always happy to come and speak with students and help them out on any types of project. Additionally, digital resources are also valuable tools. For example, there's lots of tools on Google Earth that can be used to gather data, such as the measuring tool. Websites can be also a great way for students to gain evidence. And finally, applications like Google Docs and Sheets enable students to collaborate online for writing and data. Place matters. It's important for students to feel connected to a place. It can be in your schoolyard or in your town. They need the ability to explore the place so they really become familiar with the issues. We couldn't use school time, so we did a lot of these trips and research trips on the weekend. Town Argument 1. Some of the newer graves at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery are wet. Fact, by using information found in the library, students found information on when the land was bought and how the town knew that it was wetlands and low. Moral of the story, you can fill in a wetland, but deep down, it's still wet. Argument 2, the swamp could cause downtown Concord to be flooded. Fact, by analyzing data found on the USGS site on flooding, none of the top 10 floods in Concord ever occurred on this side of town. And using Google Earth, they measured the distance and elevation from the river to the swamp, and it would be like Noah's Ark in order for this to ever happen. Argument 3, beavers. Beavers who moved into this area caused the swamp. Fact, by researching the journals of the famous environmentalist Henry David Thoreau, students found that Thoreau mentioned in his journal in 1856 Moore's Swamp continually. So while beavers made the swamp deeper, they didn't create it. Choice. Students selected the topic to explore, the members of their groups, and how to present their learning. Products range from graphs to slides to persuasive pieces. All research was then incorporated into a 29-page Google document that was organized by a student editor. Engaged students equals no classroom management issues. Real life skills, it was full of it. Students analyzed data, spoke at public meetings, used critical thinking skills, researched using many different resources, and utilized persuasive writing skills in their report. Just like the story at the beginning of the year, these fifth graders had indeed become the seekers of knowledge. So the swamp ultimately was drained, but this project enabled my students to engage in real life civic environmentalism work.
Welcome to Check Out STEM, Expanding Access to STEM and Literacy. My name is Sarah Nelson. I'm the Interim Director for the NASA Iowa Space Grant Consortium and the 4-H STEM Program Specialist.
I'm Connie Beecher, the Associate Professor of Education and a Family Literacy Specialist for Human Sciences Extension and Outreach. So Check Out STEM was a project where we created an activity guide framework, and then students, college students in science methods courses, design lessons based on the framework. And then we got a grant and we put together these kits and piloted them with 6 libraries in our state. We were really thinking of this idea about access to literacy and STEM. We know recently, for example, we've seen declines in reading and math across all students, but particularly in elementary. And we really want to make sure that parents understand not only reading with kids, but also engaging in STEM-related activities is important.
We also had a lot of partners with requests, and Jerry Hyde in particular at the Ames Public Library was a wonderful collaborator, and we were all working to really narrow that digital divide, mitigate any summer learning loss, and close the word gap. So the activity guides themselves for Check Out STEM all included a fiction book, STEM and literacy play materials, a nonfiction book, and then extension ideas. The newer ones also include art activities. The activity guides all use an evidence-based instructional framework to support high-quality interactions. And here's the insides of one of the backpacks. You can see a Bebot, the 2 books, and some different STEM and literacy play materials. All the activity guides also use the experiential learning model of do, reflect, and apply. And so they have a great hands-on component and are really easily understood by parents and educators.
Here are some of our titles. You can see we like alliteration and rhyming. We wanted to make them attractive and fun.
And these pictures are also included for fun so that you can see some of our pilot backpacks that were used. The clear backpacks allowing people to see inside and hopefully get excited about the materials. The checkout process, starts by tagging both the backpack and in this case at this library, a tag where you grab it, you go to the desk, you check it out, take it home for a couple of weeks and then return it. And then it's inspected by the library staff upon return.
So we did an evaluation of our pilot. The thing that really stood out is librarians saying the backpacks were in constant circulation, so they were always checked out. Families reported that they enjoyed them very much. We started with 6 libraries and now we're in 44 and counting, and have added sites like school libraries, preschools, the STEM Hub, Extension and Outreach offices as well.
Next steps for us include continuing to evaluate the backpacks, releasing some new activity guides, typically once a year or annually, and then also expanding the programming around the kits. If you'd like to download the activity guides, here is the link. The top one is Check Out STEM. The bottom one is Check Out STEM in the Arts, and it is a free download.
Any questions? Feel free to email us, and thank you for your attention today.
Welcome to STEAM activities across grade levels, extending the 2018 article, Marvelous Metals Matter, a STEAM lesson for 5th graders incorporates the EDP process. I'm Dr. Kathleen Tate. Key concepts across the curriculum are physical properties, different uses of metals, using technology in the engineering design process, data representation, proportionality, and ratios.
Cover art concepts such as sculptures created by manipulation, subtraction, substitution, or addition. Sculptures may be large or small or made from a variety of materials. There are great sculptors across time and cultures and even locally. The focus on this lesson is on wire sculptures, which can be made from one continuous piece or multiple pieces. Metal objects displayed in the classroom and discuss what the objects have in common and what are some of the shared characteristics of metals, why metals are important in our lives at school, at home, and beyond, and what kind of jobs deal with metals. Discuss the standards explicitly and the goal for the day, which is to be engineers and artists and identify what they have in common by the end of the lesson. Get started with the science concepts and the math concepts, physical properties, and data representation. For small group work, provide envelopes filled with various types of metal objects. Have students create their own charts with paper and pencil to conduct science and math observations. Have columns for color, hardness, response to magnetic force. Provide magnets. Ask them what they should include in their charts. For example, have a predictions column. And talk about representing and interpreting data related to both science and math. Ask how they will test for hardness.
Discuss types of hardness tests before and after the experiment.
Discuss different ways to test metals for hardness in a school setting or out in the field and related safety considerations. Discuss how they will record results and let them conduct the experiment and observe their metal objects. Afterwards, ask what they observed and recorded, what they learned, and how their predictions panned out, what surprised them, and go back to that chart on slide 6. Ask them why they think home appliances and so on are made with different types of metals, and how the environment may affect metals and even their colors. Ask them what metal they think the Statue of Liberty is made of and why. Then display pictures of the Statue of Liberty. After viewing and discussing, then name that metal sheet as a whole group, break into smaller groups, and discuss why copper was used to make this huge sculpture, the Statue of Liberty, and the color of it. Independently write short paragraphs about thoughts reflecting on what was learned during the investigation. Discuss that metals are used for different purposes, and it's important to have that in mind when planning the design of a car, bridge, computer, and so forth, and introduce or review the engineering design process. Discuss limitations of certain metals and design elements that engineers have to think about, as well as cost and other aspects of design. Make comparisons to the writing process of language arts and how the EDP can even be used at home to design a fort or a treehouse. Discuss sculpture concepts and look at a variety of sculptures in children's books and on websites. Have them sketch a sculpture idea with pencil and paper and then use the EDP chart to write a few notes along the way about their sculpture plans. Discuss how artists tend to work individually and engineers work collaboratively in teams, and the advantages and disadvantages of each, and that having a plan does not need to stifle creativity. Have them choose metal objects and art objects such as beads to make their sculpture, and use gloves and goggles for safety.
Have children reflect and discuss limitations, materials, and design choices, and then determine how they could scale up their sculpture to 12 to 20 feet tall and where they might place it in front of a museum, at a park, and so forth, and use graph paper and calculators to make a scaling plan. Then collaboratively use technology such as Chromebook to do some reflections about STEAM aspects of the lesson. Extending this lesson into more depth with art and science comparisons, the NGSS standards across grade levels focus on properties of matter, and the National Arts Standards have a Create Anchor standard across grade levels. It's a great time to go further into sculpture. Referring back to the earlier slide, children can do manipulation with clay, different types of clay, and compare those materials. Do subtraction, carving, relief sculpture with paper and indenting, and manipulation assemblage found objects with a water bottle and milk jug, as in the photo to the right. Check out the original article, but here are some pictures of EDPs, drawings, and sculptures. Thank you so much.
Welcome to STEM Connections, Exploring Communities. My name is Belle Akers and I teach first grade in San Francisco. I take great pride in sharing a few of my favorite STEM and STEAM challenges related to the theme of communities. Take a neighborhood walk to explore what is nearby your school. Bring clipboards, paper, and pencils to sketch with. Exploring communities is a natural fit in guiding students to deepen their understanding of the world around them, and also to develop empathy for the needs of others. The dual impact of an engineering design process and the next generation science standards, science and engineering practices create hands-on opportunities for students to explore and construct with materials. Students make connections with their own experiences when exploring the themes of cities, suburbs, and neighborhoods. After an introduction to communities, engage your students in making small-scale models. I typically have groups of 4 to 6 working on one model. That number ensures that each student is actively working on the model, whether individually or partnering within the small group. Students collaborate in groups using the engineering design process. Ask, imagine, plan, create, improve, and reflect. Important criteria to review include traffic patterns and the location of structures and spaces. Final details include making signage. For a writing extension, students write a paragraph describing their neighborhood. Older students can write a trifold brochure featuring highlights. Encourage students to make text-to-self connections. Take a closer look at the community experiences of children in this dynamic trio of books written by Matt LaPena and illustrated by Kirsten Robinson. Can your students connect personal experiences, like Milo who rides the subway in New York City, or with CJ and his Nana as they ride the bus to their destination? In Carmela Full of Wishes, she travels with her brother through their neighborhood, stopping at the laundromat, Miss Maria's vegetable stand, and other small businesses. Students make connections to where they live and what makes up their community. Planting gardens is a theme in real life and in literature. From Victory Gardens in the Boston Commons to community gardens, introduce your students to how gardens bring people together. To literature selections, Harlem Grown, How One Big Idea Transformed a Neighborhood, and The Curious Garden, Explore Garden Spaces. Check out Alice Waters Cooks Up a Food Revolution for a look at her edible schoolyard motto and contribution to the farm-to-table movement. Look at your school site. Are there areas where students can work together to plant gardens? As part of our science curriculum, students planted and took care of a vegetable garden. Weekly observations were written in science notebooks that also included labeled drawings. Make the connections to self and the world with reading aloud The Ugly Vegetables. Students are introduced to cultural diversity and how a little girl comes to appreciate her mother's garden. Following the farm-to-table model, our students harvested lettuce, kale, and radishes to make a salad. They also packed herbs, sage, mint, spring onions, and parsley to take home. Another option if growing vegetables is not possible is to ask students to bring in fruit for making a fruit salad. Read aloud a song of frutas as a companion piece. Invite families to send in fruit. We shared our fruit salad at a Thanksgiving snack with second graders. Explore communities through the lens of public art. Is there public art where you are located? If not, read the books, Hey Wall, and maybe something beautiful with your students. Find out how activism leads to making change and bringing communities together through art. For Art Connections, investigate whether there are locations at your school where students could add public art. Sponsor an art day on the weekend where families can come in and experience outdoor art activities. Our first graders shared messages of kindness with colorful chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Introduce your students to Frank Lloyd Wright and his contributions as an architect. Read aloud The Shape of the World. Then explore the architecture found in your location. When building towers, make math connections with identifying shapes, measuring height, and counting how many index cards were used. Another option for towers is using pipe cleaners, which are flexible and create challenges with stability and balance. Why are bridges important to people? Have you seen or traveled to a place where you went on a bridge? Introduce key vocabulary: bridge, span, abutments, beam, and arch. Forces at work include push, pull, and compression. I provide exploration with building bridges using blocks, Jenga, Kiva planks, magnetiles, and Legos before the STEM challenge of building a bridge with index cards. World landmarks and monuments are a natural fit for cross-curricular areas with social studies and math. Make connections to self and the world by identifying landmarks nearby your community. Share about places you have traveled to. What architectural details did you see? What materials were used? For a STEM challenge, students were asked to imagine, plan, and build original monuments. On the plan sheet, students shared about the monument they designed. Destination imagination. What happens when you find an abandoned fort in the woods? Join in the imaginative tug-of-war that ensues between a boy and girl, who unknowingly are creating a castle and pirate ship in the story The Fort. For STEM castles, students built a castle using 5x7 white index cards and Scotch tape on a cardboard base. Then they added a cast of characters. Using the writing workshop model with their STEM castles, students wrote a fairy tale. Who lives in the castle? What happens? I hope viewing this snapshot of STEM connections, exploring communities, has sparked inspiration to incorporate related science and STEM challenges with your students. Expand your students' understanding of community with engaging STEM challenges. There is so much to learn from each other.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this Pechakucha virtual presentation, Turning on Design Thinking in the Early Years with the Switch of a Light. I am Dr. Shelley Council, an early years columnist with NSTA Science and Children. Design thinking can play an important and central role in young children's STEM development. According to WISE, design thinking generally refers to a solution-based technique used to solve problems. While engineering design provides a useful context that helps children figure out how the world works, a focus on design is to intentionally develop an object, a system, or a process. The object, system, or process has been developed to address a specified need, solve a particular problem, or satisfy a targeted goal. Just as children make frequent design choices during their imaginative play, such as using cardboard boxes to construct a fort, light is a phenomenon that young children can easily explore and investigate, offering a wide range of design challenges within both natural and man-made worlds. In the new Early STEM book with Teachers College Press, Investigating Light and Shadow with Young Children, the editor, Dr. Beth Van Meteren, recommends beginning children's explorations and investigations with light phenomenon by asking an overarching question, such as, how can I use these materials? This kind of broad and open challenge inspires young children to first imagine and then contemplate the many possibilities. For example, as preschoolers investigate how light interacts with different materials, they can readily observe which materials are transparent, letting light pass through, translucent, letting some light pass through, or opaque, blocking any light from passing through. As children apply their scientific knowledge and reasoning about how various items respond differently to natural sunlight, teachers can offer design challenges to encourage children to apply their design thinking in order to figure out, how can I adhere items directly onto a sliding door or a window? How can I display different items without adhering to the glass, such as building structures or stands to display items and observe how sunlight interacts with them? The Education Development Center in Waltham, Massachusetts has also developed an early STEM curriculum titled Insights plus C Elementary Science with first grade and fourth grade. The unit of study on light with first graders is based on 5 overarching questions. Do we need light to see? How does light interact with objects? What are shadows? How are shadows created? And when and how do shadows change? To help with field testing, 18 early childhood teacher candidates implemented Insights units of study in kindergarten and first grade classrooms, with 6 teacher candidates assigned to light investigations specifically. The teacher candidates also integrated the 6 types of productive questions to help guide, facilitate, and support children's thinking during their investigations. Possible questions include attention-focusing questions. What do you notice about shadows made by opaque items? Action questions. Can you see the apple without the light? Comparison. Which items are transparent and which are opaque? Measuring and counting. How tall is the shadow? Problem posing. How can you make the object's shadow bigger? Reasoning. What do you think would happen if you wore sunglasses at night? Thinking maps were an additional supplement used by candidates to help children visually organize and document their scientific thinking before or after the light investigations. Each candidate included at least one thinking map, with each map corresponding with one of the 8 cognitive processes. The one illustrated is the bubble map, used to help children to describe the shadows that they experienced outdoors. I hope this information has been helpful as you contemplate the many ways that young children can use design thinking as they explore life phenomena. Thank you so much.
Hello, thank you for taking the time to join me on this journey. My name is Liz Setloff. I am the STEM Instructional Specialist for KDISD, right outside of Houston, Texas. My district serves over 80,000 students with a very diverse population, and this drives our need for STEAM experiences. Our purpose at the Robert R. Shaw Center for STEAM is to give students K through 12 curriculum-based STEAM experiences through field trips, after-school events, family STEAM nights, summer camps, robotics. Usually this involves multiple opportunities for collaboration between teachers, students, and the staff. As part of my job as an instructional specialist, I meet with teacher teams and discuss particular content or curriculum focus areas. This is how I'm also very aware of difficulties students have with particular units of study, regardless of the campus, like circuits. The excitement on student and teacher faces, like seen here, is always what makes it worthwhile. Too many times we hear, "It's so hard, I can't do it," when we should be hearing, "I don't have it yet, but I will." I want to bring the kids that yet. Throughout our STEAM events, we focus on the engineering design process and tie it to our curriculum topics. For instance, like from this picture, one of our camp challenges, they designed a game controller using cardboard, graphite pencils, aluminum foil, Play-Doh, and makey-makeys. They tested, redesigned, and retested using these makey-makeys on connectivity and circuits. These experiences are an important part of the learning process. So why did we tackle circuits? We needed to prepare students for assessment, but also just to tackle their curriculum and not be afraid of it. I do meet often with the teachers and the ICs. I look at their data. We uncover misconceptions. We uncover gaps and figure out where that disconnect is. And are there a lot of challenges? Yes. Circuits is not easy, and you're never going to be perfect. There are always going to be challenges. One I want to focus on, like I said, is that disconnect between what you do and what you're assessing. They still need to have those traditional inquiry experiences. They need to have open-ended and guided experience. At the end of my presentation, there's a QR code to a Google folder. I want you to click on it. All of these pictures that are in my presentation are actually videos that demonstrate the student thinking and processing, and they are amazing. This one from Arbor Scientific is just pure open-ended inquiry. I just put some stuff in front of them and I let them go. Maybe I give them an example pick or I give them some guided questions, but mostly they're coming up with their own designs and meeting their own goals. Makey-makeys are a little more focused, like I said earlier. They're looking at conductivity. Here, these children, they'd already figured out what conducted electricity. They connected it to the makey-makey, and they're playing songs, touching the various items, which can include things as varied as a metal fork to a banana. So this is Z-Space. That's a very high-tech. Students using 3D images they can manipulate. But one thing I want to stress with student engagement is that you need to be very careful after the engaging activities to process and reflect. Connect that activity, lab, whatever you decided to do, to the unit. It could be assessment probes, class discussion, warm-ups, take it out, something where they can see maybe a diagram or a question that's similar to what they're going to be assessed. So this is just some examples of some Texas STAR released questions from past years. And you can see they're very predictive. What would happen if? What would you likely observe when? And it's very different from what the students are doing in their inquiry activities. And I think that's one place where that disconnect occurs. So we created these review circuit boards. And it's our solution to the, hey, you're going to see that on a test. Do all the cool things, but then bring it home. Let the kids see, oh, this is what a test question is going to look like. This is what a diagram on a test is going to look like. Here, we actually take the released questions and diagrams and tie them to pre-made circuits. And the kids predict the answer to the questions that I give them and then test it out. So again, there's videos to this, but the thinking process can be painful. Sometimes listening to the children talk about why they think something is happening can take a little longer than you expected. You've got to let it happen. It's an important part of their learning process. So here's my QR code. You can pause it and scan it. And I got some great videos in there and information on how to build your own boards and my info. Thanks and have a great day.
Hi, my name is Liz Setloff. I work at the Robert R. Shaw Center for STEAM in Katy ISD in Katy, Texas. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our family STEAM nights and unpack them for you so that hopefully you guys can have a family STEAM night at your campus or in your district. We STEAM in a lot of ways. During the day, we have field trips. Kids K through 8 come in and they have STEAM-based, curriculum-aligned experiences. At night, our high school students come in and do robotics. Sometimes they're here on the weekends too. And we do 2 to 3 family STEAM nights a year, usually. And you can see from the pictures, it involves the whole community. Kids, their parents, educators, local businesses, the universities in the area. Everybody gets involved, and you can see we all have an amazing time. Why does anybody STEAM? STEAM is so important for a variety of reasons. Think about creativity, curiosity, multitasking, everything that comes together with STEAM. Kids get this at our family STEAM nights, but they also have that parental involvement. When the students see that their parents are involved and interested, they get more engaged as well. So our environment is unique here at the Shaw Center because, as you can see, we have a dedicated facility. But you can have just as amazing STEAM nights at your campus. Think about the size of your turnout, the building, your room capacity, how many activities you want to run, what space do you have to rotate between activities, and of course, don't forget your outdoor space. That's adds a lot of more things that you can add to your evening. My secret to success is the STEAM contributors. I work really hard to find other people to work with me from all over the community. The universities, the companies, everybody. I look all over the place. Another way to run your STEAM night in a way that makes sense is use renewable or reusable STEAM equipment. I have my Z-Space, I have wind tubes, even fans and Kinects. And that way you don't have to spend that money year after year. It's an initial investment. As you can see here, we've got some folks there playing with the cubelets. Again, it's an initial investment, but those can be played with year after year, and they are definitely. Oh my God, how are you going to get it to stay on the little girl here, she's amazing. She's actually painting her emotions that evening. Kids get engaged in STEAM in a million different ways. You can see here we have this little girl. She's playing like she's an astronaut and trying to work with her her fine motor skills. We've got magnetic slime, gears, and fish adaptations, all kinds of amazing activities. Facilitators, don't do it by yourself. Educators like Miss Spees, she's amazing. High school students come and help. Parents, community members, some of your social services like your police department or your fire department. You would never believe all the different places you can get people to help you run these events. And I also use X2Vol, just so you know. Gathering STEAM materials, recycled materials. Ask for volunteers or people to contribute. It's your school budget. Ask if you have a budget for STEAM nights. Fundraise. Ask businesses to help with the cost of some of the supplies, and the volunteers. And always look around for grants. There are tons of STEM grants out there. Safety is extremely important. If you're going to involve food, think about allergies. Make sure the equipment you use is safe. Those parents aren't always going to have their eyes on their kids. Crowd control, use a clicker at the door. Make sure the kids all wear their IDs. You don't always know that the people coming in are from your district or your campus. How we get funding for the events, the same source as the material gathering. Look around for funding. Many of our contributors bring their own materials, so free is always good. And again, grants. STEM is good for the entire community. So full steam ahead, folks. Science, technology, engineering, art, and math are amazing, but family STEAM nights can be so much more. A family who plays together stays together. And this is so much our why at the Shaw Center. When we see these smiling faces, it makes our day. So again, my name is Liz Setloff. I'm so glad to have spent some time with you guys. My email address is right here for you, and email me if you have any questions. Enjoy your conference.
Hello, my name is Godwin Morris, and I run a STEM education center in New York City called Dazzling Discoveries. And I also run a makerspace in New York City called Skill Mill NYC. We work with hundreds of children every week. We work with dozens and dozens of educators every week. And over the years, I've created a couple of products and projects, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So the main focus of our past year has been what we call engineering with paper. And you can see from all these colorful boxes that there are lots and lots of projects. They're all made with paper, and they're all made from basic alphabet of shapes. If you use the paper to make certain shapes, like a ramp or a cylinder and other shapes, you can then build with them. We found that this is a very, very effective way to get kids started with engineering. All you need is paper, tape, scissors, and some markers. Could be copy paper, could be heavier, a little bit heavier cover stock paper. Magazines, great for recycling. Almost any kind of paper will work. I'll show you some projects. This is just a quick image of two of the shapes that we use. One is a track, strip of paper with the edges folded up, and another piece rolled into a cylinder. These two simple shapes, when connected, can make a catapult. Here is the catapult. You will also notice the target, or the basket, is also made of the same cylinder and a track just a little bit wider. This is a free download on our website, our Engineering with Paper website. We have several free downloadable projects. This is an example of our parachute project. I'm just going to run through some quick images for you. This is a carousel. Again, these are all simple shapes, cylinders, wider ones, narrower, all simple shapes that you can use, that your students can use to build almost any kind of project. A vehicle. Marble runs or roller coasters. This is just one where we made two at the same time. This is a creature. This is balance. This is a balance beam made completely with paper. This is a maze project. This is a cityscape. This is another one of our free downloadable projects. We did this a year and a half ago for the census. This is a pretty simple marionette. It's two straws, rolled paper rolled into straws with some paper strips as the string, and then a flat image taped to those strips. This is what the packets look like when you get them. They are line art. They can be looked at on a computer. They do not have to be printed, but of course you can print them out, and they just are step-by-step how to fold the paper into shapes and then how to use those shapes to make projects. This is another product. This is our cardboard engineering kit, where two of them are Dazzling's beams and our Dazzling's shapes. And to see all of our projects, please look at our Instagram, particularly our Engineering with Paper Instagram. That's where you'll see all the different kinds of projects. We'll give you some ideas. If you can follow along just from the pictures, please do that. If you want to use our downloadable packets, some of them are free and the other ones are low cost. They're available. They provide step-by-step about how to make the shapes, how to make the projects, to make it a little bit easier for you to guide your students. But either way, if you can look at our projects and figure it out, that's great. And if you want our packets, we're delighted to have you use them. Again, our Instagram is Engineering with Paper. Our Twitter, you can use my name. My name is Godwin Morris, and that's very effective for my Twitter followers. We are also on Facebook. Our email address is info@dazzlingdiscoveries.com.
Or your fellow elementary teachers struggle to find resources for teaching science and technology? I'm going to share a solution that I use in both my school classroom and university teaching in Australia. My research has shown the use of toys to be effective. Toys, and lots of them. Why are we going to work with toys? It's not to dumb the science and technology down, but to raise it up. Science and technology is everywhere in our world, and toys are perfect for seeing how stacks of stuff works. Toys can be useful for teaching about sound or light, about how things move, thinking about types of animals in the marine environment, or exploring elements of design. All of these topics and more can be made engaging, informative, and interactive using toys. Teaching science and technology at the primary level is not rocket science. Well, maybe it is. We might ask you to predict what will happen when I spin this disc. And then I'll get you to observe. What do you notice? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? And toys like this make you start to ask questions. Why is it still spinning? What makes it do that? Does it matter which kind of surface it's on? Will it always do that? How long is it going to keep going for? Do you notice that the sound is changing? Can you explain why the sound is changing? Is it going to keep on changing? And how long is this actually going to go for? Toys can trigger questions. For example, did you see that? Why did that happen? What if I do it this way? Toys help you notice things and think things through. When I do this, it does that. And before you know it, you're saying, oh, I get it. This happens and then that happens. In other words, toys become the teacher and the children can then control their own learning. So what sorts of toys, you ask? I have old toys, new toys, loud toys, quiet toys, puppets, robots, big toys, little toys, simple toys, electric toys, technological toys. And we have mechanical toys. In STEM, toys can help students learn how to solve problems. My kindergarten children designed and tested scooters using Legos that could be moved by the wind. They drew a plan, made and modified the design, and evaluated their final prototypes. An issue elementary teachers of STEM face is how to help children make links between their school learning and everyday life. Careful selection of toys for specific purposes is one way we can help teachers address this issue. You will never look at toys as just for kids again. You will go away with a totally different view on science and a perfect excuse to hang out in toy shops. I invite you to jump into science and join me on a journey to unlearn science and view it the way it should be, engaging, everlasting, for everyone, every day, everywhere.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Kirsten. I teach lower school science at Collegiate School in New York City. I usually begin each year with kindergarten teaching on body systems, and 2 years ago I decided to add a unit on the brain. I added units on engineering and design to create a skull with the younger kids, and I also talked to their kindergarten teachers and we did something together on mindfulness. So this is a unit that you may find useful for students as young as pre-K and all the way up through 5th. It can be sort of expanded to include more information on the brain or just the basics, which is what I did with kindergarten. I hope you find this useful. In 2019, we did a lot of professional development about brain-based learning and the importance of explaining to children how the brain works. I decided to add a brain unit to our kindergarten work on the human body. Body systems is our first major unit of the year. I start the year with a fun lab that runs from kindergarten through 4th grade. We measure a student's height, the size of their hands, the size of their feet, and keep a tally of the teeth they've lost. This is a good introduction to our study of the human body. We use an iPad app called Notability so students can draw and take photos. We begin with the definition of what is living and non-living. Then we start learning about each body system by reading from a book like Dr. Seuss's Inside Your Outside, which covers all of the systems. Side note, Does It Fart is an amazing way to introduce the digestive system. As I go through different body systems, the student cut out pictures such as the digestive system or bones. We glue the pictures onto jumbo body shapes. I love the ones from Lakeshore Crafts because they come in a wide variety of skin tones so students can choose their own body. After we finished the other systems, it was time to introduce the most complicated system, the brain. I scheduled the brain for a 3-week unit, which meant 6 classes on this system. I discussed this unit with our homeroom teachers and the school psychologist. We all used the same language, and I sent home a parent letter with our new vocabulary. Students discussed how the brain is part of our body systems and where it is in our body. We looked at a model of the brain. I found a nice soft model on Amazon that students could take and touch and take apart. I introduced 2 specific parts of the brain, the amygdala, an almond-shaped piece in the oldest part of both hemispheres that is responsible for emotional and impulsive behavior, or fight, flight, or freeze. Then we discussed how the prefrontal cortex, and the newer part of our brain, can help us regulate our anxiety and anger. We had a good discussion about some of our goals in kindergarten, especially in terms of not getting physical with our friends in school or with siblings at home. We talked about taking a mindful moment to let the prefrontal cortex do its job and calm us down. We practiced mindfulness at the beginning of each class, and other classes tried mindfulness as well. The class pictured here is actually first grade. Our first project was making a mindfulness bottle. The bottles went home the same day with the students. The mindfulness jar is meant to be used when the student is frustrated or upset. We talked in class about how counting while watching the glitter slowly settle can help the prefrontal cortex calm the amygdala. We practiced shaking the bottles and counting how long it took until the glitter settled again on the bottom. I also made larger versions of these bottles to keep in the kindergarten classrooms. The next challenge was to design a safe home for the brain. We examined a skull model and wondered how the skull might protect the brain. Could we build something similar? How could we protect a brain? I divided the classes into 4 groups of 3. Each team received a plastic tray, packing supplies, and masking tape. The students had a class period to design a safe place for their brain to live in and to survive a 6-foot drop. On testing day, each group was given a raw egg inside a Ziploc bag. The egg had to go inside their skull design and remain uncracked after a drop. I held up each tray and dropped it from 6 feet, and then we opened the skull to see if the brain survived the drop. After a drop, that team was given a chance to discuss their design. We asked them what choices they had made. If their egg survived, what did they do to make it safe? If the egg broke, what could they have done differently? We also talked about how teams stayed calm throughout each drop. There was little fighting or drama because we were letting the prefrontal cortex make better decisions. Mindfulness became the last thing we did in every class before we transitioned back to their homeroom. After cleanup, we would often listen to a Go-Zen video and find ways to calm our amygdalas. When classes moved to remote instruction, I assigned some of these activities on our Seesaw account. The class favorite was watching different bird cameras on the Cornell webcams. It is an excellent way to be centered and mindful. Next year, we will continue our work with mindfulness and learning about the brain. Please feel free to contact me with any questions.
Turn up the music. 4th grade students explore sound with repurposed objects. My name is Kathy Scott, and I'm an Associate Professor of Education at Coastal Carolina University in Conway, South Carolina. In this lesson, Caitlin Lindaberry and I share the ways in which Caitlin worked with her students on how to amplify sound. For the lesson, students use recycled and repurposed materials to create an amplifier. Sound is a form of energy produced by vibrating objects. It must travel through a medium which allows the vibrations to make it from the object to our ears. An amplifier increases the amplitude of sound waves, thus increasing the volume while not changing the frequency. To begin the lesson, students started with a gallery walk. 8 statements were posted around the room, such as sound travels fastest through gas. Students were provided stickers and had to indicate with the sticker if they thought each statement was true or false. This allowed us to formatively assess students' knowledge of sound. Next, the group discussed their thoughts about the gallery walk, and we worked to clear up misconceptions that they had about sound. We explained that they would be working with a partner to create a blueprint for a device that would amplify their favorite song. Students began by researching to determine how sound carries and what would amplify their sound the best. After their research, the students drew diagrams, such as the one shown, of their amplification systems, identifying the materials used and a brief description of why they thought their device would work, using their experience and the research they had done to support their claims. Once their blueprints were developed, students entered the build, test, and revise stages of the design phase. Using their materials, students constructed a model of their amplification device. They were encouraged to test multiple models to ensure that they could amplify their sound as much as possible. Once the devices were ready, students tested them by playing their favorite song through the device. We used the free app dB Volume to measure the volume of their song and to see if it increased with the amplification system. If the sound did not increase in volume, partners worked together to rethink their plans and to refine and edit their designs. Once the students were content with the volume of the music, they explored ways to make the design aesthetically pleasing or developed an advertisement for why their system was the best. Each pair presented their prototypes to the class, and they discussed which variables affected the volume of the sound positively and which ones negatively impacted it. To evaluate student work on the activity, we created a rubric to evaluate their projects. Using a 4-point scale, students were evaluated on characteristics including perseverance and dispositions, their research content, their diagram content, the materials that they used, and their presentation of the prototype. Thank you for taking time to view our presentation today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at cscott1@coastal.edu. If you're interested in reading this article, it can be found in the July and August 2021 edition of Science and Children.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Richard Cox from Winthrop University. On behalf of my colleague, Dr. Kirsten Cook from Bellarmine University, we are thrilled to explore transdisciplinary instruction through science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics. The terms you see here swirl around elementary science teaching and learning, often emerge from teacher preparation programs and are revealed in articles, blogs, and more, yet they remain ill-defined or misunderstood. We hope that after this, you'll be able to explore the unique nuances of each of these terms with some confidence. We'll have a special focus and do a deeper dive into transdisciplinary teaching and learning in STEAM. Here are the terms presented in a slightly different way on a continuum. So try to focus on 3 of them: multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary. I'm going to use food as an example, so if you're hungry, grab a quick snack. Think of multidisciplinary as a vegetable or a fruit tray. Each fruit or vegetable, or discipline in our case, is separate, delicious on their own and on the tray together, but usually never really combined. Think of interdisciplinary as vegetable soup. Each vegetable or discipline is still its own thing with a distinct flavor profile, but now combined they make something new and delicious while still being distinguishable. Finally, think of transdisciplinary as a cake. Each ingredient or discipline is combined in such a way to make something new and totally different. You know that the flour and eggs are in there, but it's more blended and has been transformed. Here's a more formal definition of transdisciplinary learning, which is an approach to curriculum that really tries to dissolve the boundaries between the conventional disciplines as we know them. It's always rooted in the construction of meaning in the context of a real-world problem or a wicked problem, something that has more than one solution. As a framework, look to these characteristics as you explore and reflect on your current instruction and also critically evaluate resources. Is what you're doing transdisciplinary? Is the resource you found or been provided with transdisciplinary? As a checklist, these characteristics might help. Let's take some time to explore 3 classroom examples, each representative of an integrated approach. You've probably seen or implemented this lesson. Here, students are actively engaged in all the disciplines: math for measuring pumpkins, science for learning about the life cycle, English and language arts to explore storybooks about the fall, for instance. In this example, students are engaged in a STEM activity where they design and construct a parachute, measure the rate at which it falls, analyze the data, and then give it another try. Finally, in this example, students discover a real-world problem and the need to solve it. Students engage in empathy as they work together to design, build, and share a prosthetic arm for a fellow student. Let's explore why each of these fits in their specific categories. The multidisciplinary pumpkin problem incorporates a variety of disciplines, yet each discipline is a separate lesson. There really isn't much of an attempt to synthesize the disciplines. In the interdisciplinary example, the parachute lesson incorporates all the disciplines that we're familiar with: science, technology, engineering, art, and math to solve a problem. But the task is provided for the students rather than generated by an actual issue or a real-world context. Additionally, each discipline is approached as a checklist. Students see the math, then focus on the science, and so on. In the transdisciplinary example, all the disciplines of science, technology, engineering, art, and math are incorporated to solve a problem. The problem statement is real-world and authentic, and the students develop novel approaches to solving the problem. If you want to learn more about these and other inquiries, check out this amazing book with the link on the final slide today. In that book, you'll find specific examples of STEAM inquiries that are aspirational, inspirational, and practical. You'll be able to find something you can commit to trying the next time you're in the classroom. If you have questions, comments, or want to connect, be sure to contact us. And finally, for your convenience, here are just a few of the resources we've used in this presentation. Thanks for your time.
Welcome to my presentation on Green Architects, The Wall is Alive. My name is Annette Venegas, and I am the Science and STEM Instructional Specialist for Kent School District in Kent, Washington. This unit engages students with many of the Grade 2 science and engineering standards. The lessons connect students with real-world applications and entrepreneurs in the field. It integrates science, engineering, math, and literacy, and engages students with 21st century skills. I had shown my students pictures of the straw bale garden and my hanging vertical planters. They started asking questions about why I would grow plants like that, instead of in the ground like most people. I caught myself from answering the question and instead asked them, why do you think I would do that? That started all the questions. I looked around for an engineering unit that incorporated lessons on vertical gardens, and I found one called Green Architects. The unit used an anchoring question: how can we develop buildings and communities that work with and preserve the environment? Incorporates many of the science standards and ends in a summative challenge. I introduced the summative challenge at the beginning of the lesson cycle to provide the why that students were working through all of the other sense-making investigations. In the summative challenge, students will be designing and constructing a green home that is suitable for the area in which we live. To build their house, they must understand many science concepts. To build a foundation on green architecture, students listened to the story, Earth-Friendly Buildings, Bridges, and More, the Eco-Journal of Corey LaPont. Then, for a history tie-in, we discussed the history of green architecture, and they recorded information that interested them on their own copy of the timeline. The first activity was What's Available? Students gathered information from various sources on the natural resources available in our area. This included determining where water is found on Earth and in our area, as well as learning what building materials and plants are available locally. In the next activity, students explored the types of natural disasters and hazards of our area, with the goal of understanding the design criteria for their green building. They had to gather information about Earth processes that occur quickly, such as earthquakes and forest fires, or slowly, like wind and water erosion. This led to which is better. In this comparison activity, students compared two architectural or building strategies designed to slow or prevent wind or water from changing the shape of the land and decide, with a justification, which one they thought was better. We took a break from investigations and got some reading in. Students read about sustainable design and then were introduced to Callie, Carrie, and June, three entrepreneurs who work in the field of architecture and sustainable energy. Now we're at my favorite part of the unit. The wall is alive. This is the part that originally captivated the students. Now it's their turn to design a living wall. Students started by planting in one felt pocket container, following instructions in their journal. As the plants in the pockets grew, students researched how the plants in their living walls would interact with the animals in our area, specifically highlighting how plants and insects depend on each other for survival through nourishment, plants supporting insects or animals, and pollination, insects and animals supporting a plant. Students worked in a group to decide what they wanted to plant in their living wall. All the groups did not agree on a doable plan, so we did not complete the planting of all the living walls. Some refinement is needed for the planning phase, possibly clearer criteria and constraints. The summative challenge was the final part of the unit. Students designed a model of a green home that was suitable for the area in which we live. The criteria stated that the house plan had to demonstrate an understanding of the natural resources, climate, and possible natural hazards. It also had to incorporate ideas from their planning pages. This ends my presentation on Green Architects, The Wall is Alive. If you have any comments or questions, please contact me at amv0528@gmail.com. Thank you.
Greetings, my name is Juliette Guarino-Berg. I am an elementary science specialist in New York City, as well as one of the organizers of the Elementary STEM Initiative for STEM Teachers NYC, a nonprofit organization providing professional development and other types of support to STEM teachers in the New York City metropolitan area. Today, I am excited to present Exploring Energy Transfer in Ecosystems with Sage Modeler, which outlines a series of lessons that my fifth grade scientists participated in this past academic year. This unit plan is adapted from the article, Teaching Through Tradebooks, The Dynamics Within Ecosystems by Christine Ann Royce from the April-May 2019 issue of Science and Children magazine. Royce suggests kicking off a series of lessons meant to lead students towards determining what an owl eats and constructing a food chain showing how an owl gets energy with the book Owls by Gail Gibbons. I commence our series of lessons by performing a read aloud of this book, highlighting the fact that owls are raptors or birds of prey and that they cough up what they can't digest in pellets. Following our read aloud, students use tweezers to separate hard objects like bones and teeth from the remainder of the owl pellet, which consists of materials like fur and feathers. Once students have removed bones and teeth from the owl pellets, they use the Cornell Lab of Ornithology bone identification chart to determine which organisms' remains have been removed from the pellets. They compare the bones and teeth that they have collected with the bones and teeth illustrated on the chart. Before we jump into the process of creating simple food chains, fifth grade ecologists must access prior knowledge from earlier in the academic year. One of the next generation science standards performance expectations for fifth graders states that students should be able to support an argument that plants get the materials they need for growth, chiefly from air and water. Students recall an investigation that allowed them to determine that plants need light, carbon dioxide, and water to perform photosynthesis or create their own food. Now, students are ready to begin building simple food chains. They use the kid-friendly search engine Kidtopia, which is powered by Google, to fill out their food chains. Each food chain must show how energy originates with the sun and is transferred from organism to organism until it reaches the owl's predator. Students must also be able to differentiate between producers and consumers in their food chains. Once fifth grade scientists have created simple food chains, I introduce them to Sage Modeler, a free web-based software that allows students to create basic diagrams, static equilibrium models, and time-based dynamic models. Since this is the first time students are using this application, they will create simple diagrams illustrating their food chains. Here are two basic food chains created by students using Sage Modeler. Here, they have added to their original food chain diagrams by including decomposers and including more arrows indicating the direction of energy transfer. Each student's food chain diagram has its own web address. Once students have added their web address to a shared class document, they can visit each other's food chain diagrams via a virtual gallery walk. Following the virtual gallery walk, students are challenged to transform their food chains into food webs by adding components of other students' food chains to their diagrams on Sage Modeler. This student successfully added components of other food chains to her diagram, creating a food web. This student also added newly learned vocabulary to the diagram, such as producer, consumer, and decomposer. At the end of this unit of study, each student has a food web that they can share with their classmates as well as the greater school community. Food webs can be shared via URL or printed and displayed in a common area. The activities outlined in this unit of study address two next-generation science standards performance expectations for fifth grade scientists. The first performance expectation addressed, a physical science standard, states that students who demonstrate understanding can use models to describe that energy in animals' food was once energy from the sun. Satisfying this performance expectation also allows students to engage in the science and engineering practice, developing and using models, and delve deeper into an understanding of the cross-cutting concept, energy and matter. The second performance expectation addressed, a life science standard, states that students who demonstrate understanding can develop a model to describe the movement of matter among plants, animals, decomposers, and the environment. Satisfying this performance expectation also allows students to delve deeper into an understanding of the cross-cutting concept, systems and system models. I hope that you will engage in this series of lessons with your students during the upcoming academic year. Here, you will find reference information for Christine Ann Royce's article, Teaching Through Trade Books, The Dynamics Within Ecosystems, Gail Gibbons' book, Owls, and the Next Generation Science Standards. Here, you will find web addresses for the kid-safe search engine Kidtopia, the systems modeling tool known as Sage Modeler, and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology bone identification chart. Thank you, and good luck digging into owl pellets with your students.
Did you feel that? A pre-K class uses earthquakes to begin studying geology. I'm Ann Lowry, a pre-K teacher in Reno, Nevada, and this short video will give you quick glimpses on how I used earthquakes to introduce geological concepts to my students. Though not explicitly discussed in each slide, we did follow appropriate safety protocols in all activities at school. After one earthquake, we talked and described about what all we saw, heard, and felt. We couldn't make an earthquake, but could we replicate the way something like a ceiling fan wiggled during that earthquake? After several attempts, we engineered a class seismograph where the different jumps could be recorded as lines, also introducing the idea of recording and interpreting data. The students carried this further by building with foam blocks on a salt-filled tray. Students shook their trays in different ways, noticing how each structure reacted. Of course, this ended with everyone building or creating their own cataclysmic earthquake. The class also rough mapped where everyone lived to see if the earthquake was felt more in one part of town than the other. But why did the earth move? Using the concept of pressure causing things to rise, with which the students are familiar, we created our own volcanic explosions blowing through the bottom of a mixture of corn syrup and water, allowing them to explore the relationships between the ratio of sticky corn syrup to the freer flowing water and seeing how that affects volcanic activity. Using mixtures with different viscosities helped my students ask new questions. What happened to the magma when it cools in the earth? What happens if it cools outside? Creating glue volcanoes was a great way to think through this idea with their hands. They began to see the different ways lava flowed and developed an understanding of how small amounts of mass could cool more quickly. To explore magma cooling inside the earth, the students looked at ice cubes with different materials frozen inside, which led to density questions. They also crushed materials such as cereal to investigate its components using hand lens and magnets. These activities not only built geological understanding, but also gave the students glimpses into mining, a big industry in our state. Through these activities, the students had to learn how to use tools for investigating rocks. The more the students studied the rocks, the more they noticed, the more questions they had about how rocks form and change. As we are near many hot springs, the students had lots of ideas for testing their new questions, some of which we did in class, others were sent home as family activities. We decided to use our hands the heat and pressure from our hands as metamorphosis. Putting out a variety of different materials, we acted out volcanic explosions and layered together model magic, air-dry clay, aluminum foil, rock salt, dirt, and Play-Doh. Then busy hands got to work, pushing in from the sides, flattening from above. Each rock experienced different situations, which the students discussed and compared. Now that the students had some ideas about how rocks change through metamorphosis, what about through weathering and erosion? The students brought up this point, having watched rocks on the playground change over time. They came up with ideas such as rubbing rocks with sandpaper and shaking rocks in a cup to simulate mechanical weathering in rocks. Using mechanical weathering as a starting point, the students were introduced to the differences between weathering and erosion. In Western Nevada, the students are very familiar with wind, so use straws and basers to move sand and such, knowing how material moved with and without blocking objects, modeling wind erosion. They then tested these ideas with water in the sandbox outside. This led naturally enough to exploring how sedimentary rocks form. After mixing sand and dirt, the students added water, noticing how channels were formed and which materials were deposited. They used these experiences to create their own sedimentary storage jars. A natural next step is considering how plants and animals could land in sediment and become fossilized as well, which of course started a huge interest in dinosaur bones, which led back to reviewing weathering, erosion, and metamorphic changes. The students practiced being paleontologists, recording their fossil finds through drawing and photographs, and measuring their samples before they excavated. Building off of local phenomenon, in our case earthquake, let my students explore new interests and tools, learn how to ask questions, as well as begin working on ways they can learn to answer their own questions. None of them are qualified geologists, but they have all had hands-on experiences which will help them understand geological concepts in later grades. Songs or chants, such as this earthquake safety chants, help them learn and add additional depth to the topic. Incorporating other curricular areas such as literacy, art, and PE are also valuable. We also regularly invite families to explore along with us by sending home weekly science activities related to the current topic. The students continue to show a considerable interest in geology, including pretending to collect geological samples and replicating river erosion on the playground. Thank you for watching how one earthquake led to an introductory geology unit in pre-K. I hope some of the ideas are useful. You've had as much fun as starting with your own local phenomenon. Please contact me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Morrison, a former lab scientist. I've been teaching science at UCDS, an independent preschool elementary school in Seattle for 19 years. Today I'm going to share how students document their scientific discoveries through lab notebooks. These strategies could be applied to any science curriculum. Documentation is a focus across subject areas at our school. Students document their thinking by drawing, dictating, and writing. Even our youngest learners record their aha moments. Last fall, one third grader remarked, "If you don't write down your discoveries, then they are lost. They're just in your own head." Why invest the time with lab notebooks? NGSS promotes documenting investigations. This mirrors the work that real scientists do and supports the Common Core. They are a great assessment tool, uncovering student understanding and guiding instruction. We find when students pause to record, they are more connected to the experiment, they slow down, and don't rush their work. This slowing down allows students to process their data and observations. It gives them practice organizing information and allows them to think more deeply about their evidence. Notebooks also provide opportunities for kids to use new language for the concepts they are learning, and they integrate these new science terms more quickly. Lab notebook formats are specific for each grade level, with increasing independence for students. We support early readers and writers with teacher-designed recording sheets. Younger students mostly record data through drawings and charts, and teachers take dictation. Writing increases with age. Through modeling and scaffolding, we support 3rd to 5th graders to document their work using blank journals. Lab notebooks are integrated into each science class. A typical class has an introduction and discussion of the experiment, teacher modeling of recording strategies, students making discoveries, and recording observations and data. During independent work, the teacher is having small group and one-on-one conversations with students to promote analysis and documentation. In the next few slides, I focus on the teacher-designed recording sheets. The layout and prompts match the type of experiment. It might be one square, columns, a data table. Students will have different approaches when using the sheet. We can't take dictation for every student every time, but we do as many as we can. These sheets are stored in 2-pocket or medical folders. Prompts on the recording sheets facilitate student recording and provide a starting point for them to share their thinking. They can be written or verbal and be very simple, such as, I noticed, or I found out. Verbal prompts such as, were there any surprises? Or why do you think that happened? Can facilitate student analysis. Student recording and conversations can reveal their understanding of concepts. Often taking dictation provides a deeper view than what the student records independently. In this experiment, sorting solids, liquids, and gases, one records, I noticed there are a lot of solids, while a conversation with another student reveals, I put sugar in solids because it is a whole bunch of pieces of little things. Having a class discussion before asking students to write conclusions leads to more detailed writing. Here, students discuss a behavior test with pill bugs. It mostly went back and forth, usually like 6-4. It was almost no difference. It was close to a tie. Our pill bug was mostly on the dark side. I think this is because they are mostly underground where there's no sunlight. In these slides, I share some additional strategies for supporting older students using blank lab notebooks. This style gives students more independence and builds skills for organization and recording. Recording prompts are embedded into experimental protocols, and a running checklist helps students keep track of the expectations. Clear recording instructions and modeling help students build documentation skills. Teachers continue to model recording strategies like specific layouts and expectations. Sentence starters also help students get their ideas flowing. A word wall with new science vocabulary promotes the use of the new words in student writing. What lab notebook is complete without graphics? This is the hook for many students, drawing them into the recording process. Illustrations, diagrams, graphs are a few of the ways to incorporate graphics. Details are noticed and data is analyzed as students record their investigations in this way. Narrative and summary writing is easier when graphics are drawn first. Lab notebooks can be adapted for remote learning. Here are a couple of photos of students documenting and experimenting at home this spring. I provided recording sheets and modeled recording either during synchronous learning or by video. Students posted their work on Padlet or Google Classroom, which allowed them to comment on each other's work and get feedback from me. Lab notebooks provide a platform for students to document their discoveries in a way for teachers to assess student understanding. Create opportunities for the lab notebook to be authentic and essential. Please reach out with any questions or come to my breakout session to see videos, discuss lab notebooks, and design some recording sheets. Thank you so much.
I'm Beth Van Meteren, Director of the Iowa Region Center for Early Developmental Education at the University of Northern Iowa. What you see in this photo is our integrative classroom studio. We invite educators to turn their classroom into a makerspace where their students can engage in STEM every day, and we support them through this classroom. The iceberg model helps us understand where our efforts are. PK2 classrooms spend most of their instructional time on concrete skills of literacy and mathematics, or the tip of the iceberg. As a result, little time is spent on what lies beneath, the critical underlying skills that are necessary for success in life. When we turn PK2 classrooms into makerspaces, these skills are nurtured every day. To make this shift, look for STEM from the perspective of your students. What are they curious about or trying to figure out? It helps to re-examine how we offer STEM to children. Are they fun activities but brief and disconnected? Or are they open-ended experiences that nurture the practices of science and engineering over time? Re-examine the use of your space and materials to consider turning your classroom into a makerspace. In our work with a team of PK2 teachers, they considered 4 elements in redesigning the classroom: the intellectual, physical, socio-emotional, and promotional aspects. On the left, you see how a first grade teacher swapped desks for tables. The tables took up less space and were more flexible in their use. When you look at the purple shading, you can see that the teacher could dedicate one end of the room to STEM experiences. Considering the intellectual aspect of the classroom environment, we ask ourselves, what is in this STEM experience for children to figure out? This is the underbelly of the iceberg that addresses the life of the mind in its fullest sense. To select a strong STEM experiences that will engage children over time, we adhere to 4 criteria. Producible. The child needs to be able to produce an action themselves. The result of that action should be immediate, and it should be observable by the child. Finally, there must be something to vary in the action to determine if another result will occur. Let's take a look at how this might look in STEM investigations within light and shadow experiences. When we offer the light pad in 2-dimensional materials, children can produce an action of positioning these materials on the light pad. They can immediately observe how the materials respond to light. Children can vary their actions by layering materials or mixing them. Children can engage with this independently for several weeks. When we offer a light pad in 3-dimensional building materials, children can produce an action by building with the materials on the light pad. They can immediately observe which materials block the light, which allows some light through, and which diffuse the light. They can vary their actions by nesting materials or mixing them. We can offer a flexible gooseneck lamp and 3-dimensional objects such as this cow. Children can produce an action of positioning the light and the cow and immediately observe the cow's shadow. They can vary their action by moving the position of the light or the position of the cow. They can immediately observe when the cow's shadow can be recognized as a cow or if the shadow looks nothing like a cow. We can offer rechargeable LED puck lights or tea lights and 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional materials. Children can produce an action by mixing materials with these light sources and immediately observe the results. Many children design and engineer structures with light features. When we offer a tabletop screen and a headlamp or work light, the children can select their own materials to put between the screen and the light. They can immediately observe the image on the screen and vary the position of the material and observe the image grow or shrink. Or they may engineer materials to create puppets with smiles and green eyes. In a PK2 makerspace classroom, these experiences can be going on during small group reading time. Groups of children can rotate from small group reading to STEM centers to literacy centers. At the end of the morning, children have much to write about, and if they're lucky enough to have science at the end of the day, they're excited to talk about what they are figuring out. Children have access to STEM in a makerspace classroom. They have opportunities to engage in science and engineering practices every day. We know to grow readers, children must read and write every day. If we are to grow critical thinkers and creative and innovative STEM workers, children must engage in science and engineering practices every day. Before you start a STEM Center makerspace, engage in teacher play and engage in self-reflection. Reflect on your own understanding of what it means to engage in science and engineering practices. Take the perspective of your young learners. Ponder your young learners' ease in engaging in science and engineering practices. Finally, anticipate changes to your pedagogical approaches. Plan for how you might scaffold young learners' conceptual understanding of light and shadow through science and engineering practices. We hope this inspires you to consider making your classroom into a STEM makerspace. For more ideas, we invite you to check out this book from Teachers College Press. Explore our website for many free resources on how to get started with STEM experiences. And feel free to contact me by email. I would be happy to talk and learn with you.
Hi, welcome to NSTA's Elementary Extravaganza and our project called Animal Bridges. It's a community-based STEAM project. Our project was put together at Park City Library and based on a community problem of animals crossing the highway. If you ask a librarian a question, you just might find out about a book that might solve your problem. So please join us as we take you through some of the resources available at the library and the different ways scientists and the community came together to solve a community problem. Community-based problems engage children in learning because it relates to their lives and it lets them see how integrated content areas come together to solve a real problem with real people and in a difficult situation. Somehow, all of the Utah agencies, scientists, and funding and community came together and this bridge came to be across I-80 so that our neighbors, the wildlife, and in this case a moose, could cross safely and not put anyone at risk. For the kids, this was a great way to look at how do we solve a problem, how do we engage in learning, and we made sure when we put the activities together, there were lots of ways to play because when kids are little, play is a great way to learn and problem solve. One of the books from the best STEM books list this year is Cougar Crossing. And this provided us the impetus to combine it with our bridge for a series of learning opportunities that we thought the kids would love engaging in. Now, if you ask a librarian what their favorite book is, they won't be able to choose. But for Brittany, this was one that her mentor wrote, and it's called Tracks Count. And it looks at how you can count animals by their tracks and seeing them different ways. We came up with the idea of doing shadow puppets. This is an animal we're pretending to see at night. And you can see we've got the black on one side and we have black for the curtain. There are lots of ways to count the animals. We can count just one in a graph, or we might be able to have the different footprints and note how many have been there. You might use chips, you might use chalk. We have write on walls at the library. You can use those. So stickers, art, whatever works, but looking at graphs as a way to explain your thinking puts math in a whole new light. Our next idea was that we wanted to be able to count not just day or night, but both. And so all of our shadow puppets flip-flop from one side to the other. And this one is seen during the day with a blue for the blue sky in the background for the puppets. These are great because it helps the kids recognize animals, ask how they might move, draw them. They can come up with different ways to say, would they be seen one at a time or two at a time? But they can act it out. And this is a great way to start the counting. And a librarian just might recommend another book you could use. We have crossings here, which look at all different kinds of animal crossings, including a really cool one for crabs. Wild Tracks shows you how to notice who has been out in the area around you based on their tracks. We have an adult book if you want to fill in your own background, Scats and Tracks of the Rocky Mountains. And if you really want to kind of play and have fun, we have a book with music in it about animal feet, and you can sing along with the kids. You can keep the learning going with more books. One is Whose Poop Is That? The other is Poop Detectives, and the other is Who Pooped in the Park. Definitely get kids' attention when we mention all these cool, fun words. But this lets you take a look at the serious science of scat and determining what animals have been there. You may not have seen the animal, but we have evidence to see what they're doing. Poop Detectives is great for seeing dogs that actually gather scientific data and help the scientists in the field. This is our idea board of how you could partner with a library or an after-school group and come up with a bunch of different ideas. We have animal rubbings here where you could take the tracks and do the art with animal rubbings. We have down below the ladybug and some cushions, and they made an animal bridge. So definitely don't forget, play is a huge part of learning. We've got a Polaroid camera where you could pretend it is an animal camera and you're taking photos, and the kids could do drama and make out animals walks and how they come across a bridge, all of these different things. We had fun with the library book crosswalk out front and took some flip-flops and put moose prints on them. You could do the printing with water, or you could make an art design and take a look at some stamping. And then we had puppet shows going back and forth with day or night with our friend Porcupine and Moose here. Thanks for coming. We truly appreciate the chance to get to present a little bit about what we're doing and hopefully let you see ways you can partner with the libraries in your community.
Welcome to the Language of Science, integrating literacy through the exploration of shadows. Integrating literacy throughout science explorations holds many benefits. One is the idea to help students learn to communicate their ideas, share their observations, and communicate with others. Through this practice, they can engage in scientific discourse with their peers and develop scientific vocabulary to support their ideas and observations. We're going to walk you through a 2-day exploration while students learn about light and shadow, and the teacher uses a lot of different literacy tools to help support students' learning. Throughout the 5E exploration, the day 1 started with Engage, using Moon Bear's Shadow by Frank Ash. During the read aloud, our teacher used a lot of guiding questions to connect students to their prior experiences and ideas. We intentionally avoided using any books that had vocabulary, as we wanted to just introduce the concept to the students. Additionally, we used an anchor chart to note what students observed and what their different ideas were as we read throughout the book. The use of teacher talk was used to help kind of enhance and support students' ideas. For example, if the student mentioned the sun is changing, this led to an idea about the sun's position in the sky related to Moon Bear. The read aloud was used as a way to get students to engage in discussion and reflect on their prior experiences with shadows. Following the read aloud with class discussion and anchor chart, students went on an outdoor shadow walk exploration. Students used clipboards to note down their ideas and draw where they saw different shadows throughout the playground. The second day, we sought to explore a little bit deeper into the ideas of light, how they travel through materials or block materials causing shadows, as well as how the position of light can impact shadows. Students explored with different materials, looking through and making observations about how light traveled through these different materials using opaque, transparent, and translucent materials. Students then engaged in explorations looking at how shadows developed based on the position of the light source. Throughout the different explorations, the teachers walk around listening to students' ideas, identifying misconceptions, and using guiding questions to prompt students' thinking and guide their ideas. As walking around, students were using terms as blocking light. This was a good time to introduce vocabulary about different items that were opaque, transparent, and translucent. We intentionally did not include the vocabulary at the beginning of the lesson because we wanted the students to have the experiences and the observations to connect to the new terms. After the explorations, group discussion was held again, talking about different places at home and in their lives where they see materials that might be opaque, transparent, and translucent. Students then put together a different flip chart explaining the different materials and how light travels through them. Following the 2-day exploration, students engaged in an extension where they created their own shadow puppets and retold the story of Moon Bear along with their own stories that they developed using transparent, opaque, and translucent materials to create different shadows. Throughout the exploration, literacy integration was used to help engage students in higher level thinking and meaning making. For example, The use of the read aloud and the anchor chart helps students engage in a literacy-rich environment. It was incorporated into their morning meeting, where they also engaged in journaling and recording their ideas and communicating their ideas with others. For more details and information about this activity, you can find our article in the NSTA Science in Children titled The Language of Science, Developing Scientific Literacy Through the Exploration of Shadows.
Hi, welcome to Esteem Mindset, teaching the next generation to problem solve with me, Dr. Diana. Thanks for joining me today. I'm so honored to announce that 3 of my books have gone to #1 on Amazon's hot new seller list in both science and STEM education. Wow, still can't believe it. So Esteem Mindset, the mission here really is to develop curiosity-based STEAM communities through training and empowerment frameworks. How can we create communities that support curiosity, questioning, experimenting, and failing forward? Take a moment and think about it. How do you define STEM or STEAM? And then what are some challenges you face? And lastly, what does STEAM or STEM look like at your school or in your district? If we were together, I would ask you to think, pair, share. This is a thinking routine that comes from Harvard's Project Zero. They have numerous hundreds of these thinking routines for free, and this presentation is hyperlinked so you can have them at the end. So some of the challenges that I often hear from teachers and administrators is that people don't know where to begin or how to start. It's kind of overwhelming. Should they call it a STEM program, a STEAM program? Should they design a makerspace? Should there be mini makerspaces in classrooms? Should it be a design lab, innovation center? And then there's that systemic issue, right? How can we encourage the girls, the boys, kids of color, neurodiversity? We want everybody to participate. How do we do that? And lastly, time. We never have enough time. Things are always being added to our plates as teachers, and nothing is getting taken off. So one framework is called challenge-based learning, and this comes from Susan Drake. And it explains that when we apply it to STEM or STEAM, we're phrasing our learning as a question, and we're asking the kids to solve a problem or giving them a challenge. It's open-ended, so there's more than one right answer, which leads to collaborating, creativity, and sharing of ideas. How this varies from project-based learning, and sometimes challenge-based learning can be called problem-based learning, but 2 PBLs is confusing, so we lean towards challenge-based learning. And it's short. They're 40, 45-minute lessons. They can be done once a week as a Friday activity or something fun. They're good for substitutes, right? And they're great to get done quickly. So the emphasis really here is on the process and not the final product. So imagine a challenge where you ask your students to work together in small groups, building a tower taller than a chair using only index cards and cups, right? This is a low budget activity. Most of us would have these supplies lying around the school. So after the kids are done building, I would ask them to do a chalk talk where they share ideas and connections and questions that came up throughout the activity. So really our debrief or our synthesizing of the lesson happens at the end when we're doing a CBL unit. And then let's apply it to the cycle of problem solving, right? This is the 3 Ds, where kids are asked to define. So they say, well, what is the problem? And then they design their solutions and experiment. And it's iterative. So it goes around and around, and they work again and again and again, usually till time runs out. So we're looking at failure as something that's bad and having that mindset shift where it becomes something that's good. So failing is just part of the process when you're in a STEM workforce or if you're in a STEAM education program, right? This is all what we're doing. So iterations or trying again becomes just the norm. So as Esteem Mindset, we foster communities that are building on that curiosity, right? Where students, we want them to ask questions. We want them to experiment and tinker and have their hands on an activity. So failing is, again, not something bad, but something good. So we call it fail forward. And then the maker empowerment diagram next to it comes from Agency by Design, which is one of the projects at Harvard's Project Zero. And they say, look closely, explore complexity, and find opportunities for those maker experiments. So with the mindset, really what we're doing is teaching kids that they're in charge of their own learning. They can define what they're going to accomplish in the future. And they're in charge of asking questions, making mistakes boldly, laughing through hard things. And it's okay if you're upset and frustrated with this process. It's not easy. Here are 2 templates to reverse engineer a lesson plan to really tackle it and design it as a question or a challenge or a problem. One has a little bit more detail, including the next generation science standards and options for assessment. How can we assess students, right? So many of our programs are data driven to keep getting those grants. So these are just a few samples of ideas, and they're included in that framework of how to structure our lesson plans. So the Department of Education designed a report that said these 6 things should be included to make a great integration for STEM or STEAM in your school. So we want to develop a community of practice, have intentional risk and play, promote diversity, design flexible spaces, give our kids these challenges to solve, and work with networks of communities. So think back to the beginning of the presentation, those 3 questions, and reflect. I used to think, but now I think. Hopefully your mindset has changed. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, feel free to scan the QR code, and let's keep in touch. Thanks for joining me today. Hopefully I'll see you in Chicago.
Welcome to our presentation. We are excited to share more about this engaging early STEM program that includes classroom and home activities and digital apps centered around 3 science units: plants, ramps, and shadows. We sought to extend the early science with Nico and Noor preschool curriculum developed as part of a previous National Science Foundation project to address these 3 goals. The program is aligned to current preschool and elementary science frameworks. A collaborative team of public preschool teachers, families with young children, curriculum and media developers, and researchers co-designed activities and resources. Together, we identified experiences through which children and families naturally engage in science, math, and engineering. For instance, teachers and families shared their common experiences with plants. From this, the team designed an activity focused on building a support for a model tomato plant that was then tested and iteratively refined based on discussions and findings. The digital teacher guide developed includes a variety of activities around plants, ramps, and shadows. Teachers can find support around science core ideas and practices, and how science links to math and engineering. Teachers can also share the Family Science Fun Guide with families in their classrooms to connect home and school learning. It includes activities developed during co-design and is available in English and Spanish. As part of our overarching research project, we recently conducted a field study this spring to examine implementation of this program in classrooms and homes. We will share some insights and examples from teachers and families. In this activity, children build a model of a tomato plant, showing the parts of the plant. They design, test, and revise a support structure that will keep a model tomato plant upright. One teacher shared some feedback on this activity. While the activity was a hit, the teacher found that some children struggled with designing a support structure that worked. She then modified the activity to better scaffold this for the next group of children. In this ramps activity, children explore how objects move and predict whether they will roll or slide down a ramp. They record their choices on a chart and then compare their results. In the classroom and home, children had an opportunity to investigate force and motion using ramps to design a solution to an obstacle course challenge. In one shadows activity, families build a structure that creates shade for their stuffed animal pet. In a related digital game, children explore creating shadows to provide shade for the dogs to help them stay cool in the hot, sunny park. Across the different levels, children are introduced to bushes, bricks, and trees that they can arrange to create shadows for the dogs to help keep them cool. They create small, big, tall, and wide shadows depending on the size and shape of the dogs. For each unit, a few activities incorporate the use of a digital journal. In the ramps journal, for example, children can experiment with steep and gentle ramps and document their steps. To access the free teacher's guide and family science fun, visit the First Aid Studio's website. On this site, you can also find the digital apps with links to download in the App Store for iPad. Thank you for taking the time to view our video.